Yes, we got a great show tonight where you're going to be talking all running backs, both rookies and second-year players, so stay tuned.
Fantasy football, you dealing with the best. Keep it hype, authentic, this ain't nothing like the rest. With the Armchair Fantasy Show podcast, give advice for all the listeners to improve your stats. Yeah, we live on goingfor2.com. Tuesdays and Fridays, this is what you want. Talking dynasties and daily drafts, and we just getting started, that ain't even the half. Yeah, so go ahead, tell your friends to join. Going for two, cause no one remembers the extra point. Hey, goingfor2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show.
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 144 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We are here live every Tuesday night on Facebook Live, Periscope, and YouTube. Syndicated, of course, on all your major podcast networks and streaming in the Going for Two app for iOS and Android. I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. Ryan, how you doing tonight, man?
Good, man. Glad to get some drafts underway, and season's kind of starting to go.
Yeah, I've had a couple of rookie drafts already, and I got my big ones coming up next weekend. So I'm excited, man. We got some good stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
All right. Also joining us, first time guest, Kane Fossell of DLF. He's the host of the Devy Diet podcast as well as the Devy Marketplace podcast. Kane, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on. It's always fun to make sure that everyone knows how much I love AJ Dillon on a podcast.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. I think me and you got into a little bit on Twitter a little bit, so we'll definitely have to talk about that some. So real quick, since it's your first time on, tell everybody, kind of what you do, how long you've been doing it, where we can find you at, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can always find me on Twitter at Devy_Kane. The big thing that we do is the Devy Marketplace podcast, which is a really fun Devy podcast where we just look at values and try to understand what a Devy value means, and while we're kind of looking at buys and sells throughout the whole Devy landscape. So that's a really fun podcast for us to do. I also write at DLF, which is where I do all of my Devy writing. And if you feel like you need a little more Devy help, you can always go to the Draft Lounge, which is where we have our Patreon channel, which is just a bunch of guys, the guys from the Devy Marketplace and the guys from the Dynasty Draft Room podcast, just wanted to get together and have a place to just talk about college football, because sometimes Twitter is not the best place to do that. So we just wanted to have an opportunity to just talk about college football all the time, and we absolutely love that space over there, so you can always check us out there at the Draft Lounge.
Nice, good stuff. So how long have you been playing fantasy, and how long have you been sort of covering it sort of semi-professionally?
So I started playing fantasy football, I think when I was in seventh grade. So for me, that's not too terribly long ago. It's about half my life I've been playing fantasy football, so about 13, 14 years. And back then that was our whole thing with our football team is we did free-for-alls. So it was never week-to-week matchups. It was just free-for-alls, whoever had the most points at the end of the year, which is a much different way. It's not as many rivalries, but it's still fun to trash talk with your football team about beating them at fantasy football. And from there, the love of fantasy football just kind of exploded. Started playing Dynasty about 3 years ago. And then I've now been, talking about fantasy football on Twitter for a year now.
Nice.
I started right before the last draft.
Nice. Good stuff. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking strictly running backs. We'll cover the rookies. Obviously, they just got drafted, their landing spots. And then we'll look at some of the second-year players and try to determine if any of these guys are going to have second-year breakouts. But before we get to that, let's get into some of the news and notes.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, so a couple things here. Not too much going on in the league. We're getting the schedule here pretty soon, so we'll have something else to talk about the next show. But I want to talk about some of these fifth-year option declines that'll basically make these guys free agents. And I'm just curious to your thoughts if you think that we should be buying these guys, selling these guys, what should we be doing with these guys. So the first one on the list, the Bengals declined John Ross's fifth-year option. Looked like last year he might actually have a breakout season before he got hurt. Ryan, we'll go to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on John Ross, and are you trying to get him? And if you own him, are you just going to hold on to him, or what are you doing with him?
I think Ross is kind of worth the cheap buy attempt. I think he's someone has no value now, and with his skill set, he's worth the dart throw because he can make an impact on an offense, give you that big play potential, and we don't know if he plays and he's on an offense that's more vertical, if that's something that could benefit him. Cincinnati, he did okay when he played, but it wasn't an offense built for what he does well. If he lands in the right place, that could really hit big for him.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts on that, Kane?
I'm not buying. I'm not selling John Ross. I think I'm just holding, especially with the talk that there could be shortened OTAs, anything like that. The player that's going to hurt the most on the Bengals is John Ross, right? When we look at how long it takes for a deep threat to develop with a quarterback, that's something that usually happens over OTAs. And with the new quarterback coming in Joe Burrow, there's going to be even less familiarity with a guy like John Ross. So that's why I'm not buying. And I don't think you're going to be able to sell him for what he's worth. So I guess I would just hold him and hope that, maybe a couple games he can splash, and then you can just try and sell him right after those games. But I wouldn't do anything in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm with both of you on that one there. Because I think the community on fantasy football is pretty much still down on John Ross. They still consider him a bust, even though he started to have a good season last year. I don't think you can get what his value could be if he ends up having a pretty good start to his season, or if he goes to a team that can use him a little bit better. All right, let's move over to the quarterback position. Mitch Trubisky, no surprise here, really. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option either. Two questions for this one. We'll go to you first, Kane. One, do you think Mitch Trubisky starts the season this season? And then two, is he worth anything at all? I mean, probably talking like Superflex leagues. Is he worth anything going forward in Dynasty?
No and yes. So I think Nick Foles is going to be the 1-year spot start, for them. But I think Mitch Trubisky is still worth something, especially if you're in deeper leagues. That 12-team league that has a 35 person roster that has kind of deeper benches. I think he is worth something because he's still going to at least be a backup quarterback on another team, regardless of what happens, right? So anytime you can get a backup quarterback, especially if you're in a 14, 16-team league, Mitch Trubisky is really worth it in those leagues because when the season starts and Nick Foles is the quarterback, Mitch Trubisky is going to be going for peanuts.
Yep, that's a good point. Ryan, what are your thoughts on Mitch Trubisky?
I agree. If you have 14, 16-team leagues, super flex leagues, it's worth having him on the roster. He's going to be somebody you can probably get for free $99. Nobody's really going to want him, but he definitely has value in those situations. I play in a lot of deeper leagues like that, and QB's sometimes hard to come by, and if you have an injury, you want to be before that feeding frenzy rather than after it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if anybody listening right now to anything fantasy football related, you're probably pretty hardcore. You probably have some really deep leagues. You have those crazy scoring leagues. You got the Superflex leagues and all that kind of stuff. And I do think he's valuable in those leagues. If we're doing the same conversation probably in August when we're talking to the guys that play redraft or in those sort of standard 12-team dynasties that aren't so deep, I don't think he's got so much value. But, yeah, I think the guys we're talking to right now, I think he probably has some value there. I'm probably holding him, not trying to move him, obviously. I'm just going to hold him and see what happens. All right, let's move over to the running back position, and the Jaguars didn't pick up Leonard Fournette's fifth-year option. I know we talked about him a little bit, Ryan, before, talking about how he wouldn't gain any value if he left Jacksonville. Do you still feel that way? You still think that there's a way that he can gain value, or do you think no matter where he goes, he loses value next year?
I think it's going to be a similar value or less, unless he ends up in the perfect spot like in Tennessee because they can't afford Henry. But I have a feeling the Leonard Fournette thing is going to go how we've seen a lot of running backs. He's not going to get signed right away. He's going to wait. He's going to get way less money than he wants and maybe land in a really good situation or paired with somebody. But I think he's very landing spot dependent on what his value is going to be because he's a very specific kind of runner. He needs to be in a power offense. He can't be in one where he's running the outside, running a lot out of shotgun. He needs to be that I-back power team.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got asked a question about trading him. Someone had offered a trade to one of my listeners, and he was asking me my opinion. And I really didn't think there's anywhere he can go where he can gain value. But you mentioned Tennessee; that definitely would be a spot where he can go to. And he also mentioned Seattle could be a spot if for some reason Chris Carson or Rashad Penny don't work out this year. I think Seattle could be a good fit for him as well. It's sort of that Marshawn Lynch role. Kane, what are your thoughts on Leonard Fournette going forward?
I try not to think about Leonard Fournette going forward, just in general.
Fair.
I think Leonard Fournette's a really interesting case, right? It goes back to the whole, do drafting early running backs really matter? And Leonard Fournette's kind of the traditional power running back that we've seen just kind of go to the wayside. Guys that we've seen just go to the wayside time and time again because they don't have as much catching ability sometimes. Like Leonard Fournette did have a lot of catches this last year. Then they come in and bring in Laviska Shenault and some other weapons and Chris Thompson. So he's not going to get that receiving work.
Yep.
So moving forward in Dynasty, I don't see how you can actually count him as a viable fantasy asset. And I think next year is probably the only time where he continues to have a top 24 season.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've seen that time and time again with these running backs. They get to the end of that first contract, and they're almost not worth keeping that second contract. So I agree. All right, one last one, and this one.
Go
ahead.
I was gonna say if you have a team that's probably not gonna be a playoff team this year, and you have Fournette, don't trade him right now. Hold on to him till people are injured and desperate during the season for a running back, because that's when he's going to provide value, and you're going to get that premium trade for a desperate team. Moving him now is not beneficial to you. So if you're bad, I say keep him.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I would be a little cautious about is what if he's the one that's injured? Then you're stuck with him pretty much, because we've seen him get some injuries in the past. But good point there. I think his value right now is probably not the best. The last one on the list here, a 5th-year declines, was someone near and dear to my heart. I know Ryan knows I was a big fan of this guy, and I've held on to him for quite a bit. I actually traded him last year, and then actually traded back for him this year. I got him for a late 3rd-round pick. Mr. Corey Davis. Ryan, I'll go to you first on this one. What do you think of Corey Davis going forward? Do you think if he lands somewhere else, he can have value once again?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely could. The skill set was there. I don't know if he matched what they were doing. And who knows if he shows up a little bit better this year, being they really don't have much other than A.J. Brown and Adam Humphries. Maybe he can boost his value up. But I think he's a talented enough guy that he could be worth a cheap ad. Like you said, for that 3rd-round pick, it's worth the dart throw because he does have the skill set, the 1st-round pedigree. There's definitely questions about him, but he's flashed. It's just, if he lands the right spot, he's another guy who could be at value.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts, Kane, on Corey Davis?
Well, as Ryan knows, there's one coach that's near and dear to my heart, and that's P.J. Fleck, of course. So Corey Davis coming from that P.J. Fleck tree. I like Corey Davis. I think he's a fine player. It all just comes down to value. And, if we're looking at late 3rd-round hit rates, what are we at, 4.5%? Something like that?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you take a shot at a guy that you know is going to get signed? Corey Davis will get another contract with some team, right? So is he going to be, is he going to have more value than a late 3rd? Probably. Right, because he's going to put up at least 500-600 yards and 6-7 touchdowns, which is something you can't even buy from a 3rd-round pick. So I don't know why you wouldn't be making that trade. I think it's a no-brainer. Whether you like Corey Davis or not, you just have to go for the value.
Yeah, so I actually drafted Corey Davis in my original rookie draft, and got him, I think, the 3rd or 4th pick, and held on to him for quite a while. Traded him last year, and then I actually, like I said, I went back and bought him back this year, hoping that they would decline his 5th-year option. I got him for, like I said, a late 3rd-round pick, hoping he lands somewhere else. You almost have to kind of wipe your memory of that, that 1st-round rookie draft. and just sort of start from scratch. Like, all right, he's not going to be that guy I drafted at number 3 or number 4 overall a few years ago, but can he be viable to my team going forward? I believe he can be, and for, like I said, a late 3rd round pick in rookie drafts, he's definitely worth the buy for me. All right, so we'll get to one more of these topics here. The one that I want to talk about, and since Ryan lives in Pittsburgh, we'll go to him first. There was some news coming out from The Athletic about the possibility that the Steelers would not re-sign Juju. What are you hearing there in Pittsburgh? Are they talking about this on the radio a lot, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, this Pittsburgh's home sports media is kind of very biased, and they go with the wins. And just like the fans, everybody's down on Juju because of last year. But I don't think it's going to last. I think we're going to see return of Big Ben this season. The pass attempts going up, 300 pass attempts from last year where they barely threw it all. All that 30 Mason Rudolph games going to be out of their vision. And we can see a 100-catch season out of him. We're not going to be worried about Juju anymore.
Yep.
At this point in time, it's kind of asinine them thinking that he's either going to re-sign or not, because one bad year with two bad quarterbacks isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Those guys were doing 6 yards per pass attempt last year. That's not where he's going to shine, and that's not helpful for any receiver.
Agreed. What are your thoughts, Kane, on Juju?
So I actually just sold my only share of Juju. So, whether you believe he's going to re-sign a contract or not, Juju still has value, right? He's still a 2nd-round asset. He still had a great rookie year. We usually give wide receivers at least a little bit of a pass playing with trash quarterbacks,
right?
Especially on a run-heavy team, which they really transitioned into last year just because no one could throw the ball for them. But at the same time, right, he's still a great value. I ended up trading him for the 205 and Austin Hooper in a 2-point per reception for tight end league.
Oh, nice.
So it's a true tight end premium league. You get that extra point. So, I think it's worth it because you're easily going to get the value back from those tight ends. And plus, I think I was able to get Michael Pittman. So
nice.
It's an easy one for me.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's a good trade there, and you definitely have some value for sure. I think one good year or one bad year is not going to hurt him. Just real quick, I did have a question that came through on Periscope really quick early in the show, and I want to make sure we get to it before we get to these running backs. He wants to know our thoughts on KJ Hamler. He's talking about the depth chart, him possibly being the wide receiver 3 on that team. He got him at the 305. Ryan, what are your thoughts on KJ Hamler?
I like KJ Hamler. I think Denver's offense is ascending. I don't know if we're going to see instant impact from him, and we'll be very, very, very patient because they're not going to be a team who's passing 580 to 600 times this year. They're still going to run the ball. They're still going to go to Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy. He has a lot of quality targets ahead of him. So for him to niche out, get a nice role, it's going to take some time. So be patient with him.
Agreed.
But the talent's there. It's just he has to find a way to carve out a role.
Yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts, King, on KJ Hamler?
Well, I think one thing that Ryan pointed out is really the patience. He's the youngest wide receiver that was in this draft, right? So you need to be patient with him. And plus, he's going to, he could even be behind Deshaun Hamilton at the slot position.
True.
Right? Which they also went to Penn State together, so at least they can be riding the pine at the same time if there's only 2 wide receivers on the field. But you know what I mean? There's just so much other talent around him. And when we look at what his true ceiling's actually going to be, I don't see him as ever hitting 1,000 yards in his rookie contract in a season. I don't see him hitting, 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's not going to happen, right? He's going to be, 650, 700-yard guy, in my opinion, and he could get some sneaky touchdowns and have touchdown upside, but that's not something you're going to want to bank on.
Yeah. What do you think of the 305? You think that's a good spot to get him in rookie drafts?
Yeah, I think that's a really good price. I'm in Superflex. I like that. In one quarterbacks, I like that even more. It's a great price. I think KJ Hamler is going to be able to flash some games, especially if you're in a league that has return yards
Yep.
as fantasy points. That's another great reason to get KJ Hamler. He's a terrific return guy and was at Penn State. So, it points up for him, but we'll see just how high that stock can actually get with some of these other guys, barring injury.
Yeah, that's a good point too with the special teams, because sometimes guys like that if they don't play special teams, they may not even make the team. Whereas I think if you play special teams and you're an impact player there, if you are fourth or fifth in the depth chart, they'll keep you around for special teams. So that's a good point there, that he's good at special teams. All right, we're going to get into these running backs. Like I mentioned at the top here, we're going to talk rookie running backs first. We'll get to as many as we can before the break. And then after the break, we'll look at some of these second-year guys that, kind of disappointed last year a little bit, and see if any of them have any chance of having a second-year breakout. And we'll kick off here at the top with Mr. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I have at my number one. It looks like, Kane, you have it your number one as well. Ryan, I don't have your rankings in front of me, but I don't know if you have him at number one as your top guy or not. But if you could just kind of talk about him a little bit and what you think of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and his landing spot.
Yeah, I have him as, I don't know if I draft number one, but right now I have him as my number one projected. I still have a lot of love for the next guy we're talking about. The situation is good. They're not a hugely run-heavy offense. I don't know if they're ever going to be that, because of what they have in Patrick Mahomes and the weapons there. But even if he gets 200 carries, he's going to get efficient carries. He's going to get a lot of red zone work, because that offense is going to be in that area of the field a lot. He does that, catches 30 to 40 balls, which I think is a low estimate for him. That's a highly productive fantasy season. That puts him in that low RB1 range. And it's definitely a feasible thing. I think he's a safer pick. And even if they split up the carries kind of like they did last year, all their running backs, when they were healthy, gave you fantasy production. And he is going to get more carries than Damian Williams and Dexter Williams and the rest of those guys. He's fairly safe with that system and that offense, because that offense isn't going downhill, and I want to be attached to a team like that.
Agreed 100%. Kane, what are your thoughts on him? You got number one, so I'm guessing you like him pretty much.
Yeah, I like him. I think he has the most upside of any of these guys, just with the landing spot. This all changes if you're not playing in a PPR league. Then just throw him being number one out the window. But if we're talking full point PPR league, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has the ability to be a running back one. It's the same reason why people kept drafting Damian Williams higher and higher each draft.
Yep.
As we got closer to the season last year, right? It's the exact same reason. In that potent offense, he's going to get the work with a coach that likes to use a bell cow when he's reliable. At the same time, he gets a lot of targets. That's going to be really important in the Andy Reid offense, just with the way that they put their best players in space. They now have the guy that runs the best routes coming out of the backfield. It's a win-win. People are going to talk about how he's not the greatest in pass protection. The cool thing is you don't have to do that in an Andy Reid offense, because he's just going to put you in space, because that's what you're good at. And yeah, I like him. I think he's just sitting at the perfect spot, the perfect landing spot, and you got to just buy him when you can. I still don't have any shares, but I'd like to.
Yeah, I don't have any 101s.
I don't either, man.
Yeah, I don't have any shares. Actually, you know what? I take that back. I do. I'm in a guillotine league, and I think I got a share of him in that league. So it's not obviously a dynasty league, but it was still nice to have him on the team. But yeah, I just to echo what y'all said, I think I agree 100%. I think he fits that offense perfectly. I think we all kind of thought coming in that whoever went to the Kansas City Chiefs as a running back would be, pretty highly thought of, and I think that was the perfect pick for them. He's a receiver, like you mentioned, and I think that he can obviously be the number one running back coming off the board here with no issues at whatsoever. The number two guy on our list here, Ryan, you mentioned him a little bit earlier. He was kind of number one on everyone's board coming in because of the combine that he had. He didn't really do anything to necessarily slip. I just think it's more about CEH kind of overtaking his spot. But what are your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor in this Colts offense?
I love it, man. It's the perfect offense for him. He's between the tackle runner. He's nasty. He pushes the pile, and he's behind one of the best offensive lines in football on a team that wants to play defense, wants to control the ball. He's perfect there. Him behind Quentin Nelson's incredible. I think he's going to be 1,000 or 1,100 yard rusher this year, and he's going to be one of the top guys. I think he has that top 12 potential as well. It's really hard for me to have CEH above him because that line and what that team can do. I think Phillip Rivers boosts that offense as well. It's a great situation for him, and he fits that system. And I'm not really worried about Marlon Mack that much because they're going to go with the guy who's the more talented runner, and that's Jonathan Taylor.
Agreed, and Marlon Mack doesn't offer any receiving ability whatsoever, so he can't even fill that role. I think that's still going to be Neiman Hines. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor, Kane?
Well, I know he's talking about the best. Ryan was talking about the best running back, and that's clearly Nyheim Hines in this offense. But we'll have that conversation off air. But no,
I love him, by the way.
But when we're talking about Jonathan Taylor, right? You wanted him to go to a power offense, a power run offense that runs a lot of gap and duo schemes right up the middle on the A and B gaps, and that's exactly what they do. They have probably the best left guard in the business, so you're going to see a lot of runs to that left side. Between Costanzo and my boy Q, Quentin Nelson. So you're going to see a lot of power runs, and he's going to do really well. I don't think I would ever, in a PPR league, have him above CEH, mainly because Clyde Edwards-Helaire has more longevity in my eyes. Right, we see just longer careers of guys that are pass catchers coming out of the backfield than we do of true bell cow running backs. It's just something that happens. Not everyone is built like a freak like Adrian Peterson and can do this for, the next 90 years. He can tear his ACL and then still come back. What did he tear his ACL week 14 and came back week 1?
Yep.
Like, people like that aren't born, they're made. Like he was made in the lab. He had to have been. Like, he's just a beast. But we can't expect Jonathan Taylor to be able to do the same thing. And the one thing I'll just add, if I hear one more person talk about Jonathan Taylor's fumbles, I'm done. Like, I can't do it anymore. I can't have this argument. Like, this doesn't carry over most of the time, right? Like, over 70% of players have more touches per fumble in the NFL than they did in college. It's just people improve on that. So please don't use that as the crutch to not take Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I've heard that on Twitter as well with the fumbles, and I'm just not buying it. I think he's still the top running back. If it wasn't for Edwards-Helaire's landing spot, I don't think people would really be scared to take it number 1 overall. All right, let's move on to the number 3 running back on the list that we have here. This is not a ranking, guys. It's just the way I down. But Swift, coming into the combine, was probably the consensus number 1 overall until Taylor blew it up. But Swift's landing spot with the Detroit Lions, of course, they still got Kerryon Johnson there. They got Matt Patricia, who likes the RBBC. So his value took a little bit of a hit. Ryan, how much of a hit do you think he took going to the Lions?
He was my top guy before that. I love the skill set. I hate the landing spot. I don't trust Patricia's offense. I think if he takes it over and they dedicate giving the ball to him, that offense to him, I think it's great. I think he's a really good pass catcher, which Stafford's shown to go to when they had like Theo Riddick there, who's nowhere near the talent. He's not a guy who needs a ton of carries to produce. He doesn't need to be a 250 carry guy. He can do it up 175, 200, mixing the catches in there and be a fantasy value for you. But I could see him producing, but he's another guy that may take patience, maybe a little bit slower to get involved in the offense. I'm a little bit worried because I don't trust Patricia, but the talent kind of eases that a little bit.
Yeah, I think with Patricia there, I think if he has one more bad season, he might be out anyway. So you might get a new coach in there next year if it's another bad year for them. And then Swift's value will be on the rise at that point. Kane, I know you got him at your number 3 running back as well. Where were you on Swift pre-draft, pre-combine, and where did he move with this landing spot?
Yeah, so he was my number 1 guy coming in. He's still a tier 1 guy for me. I'm not worried about him going to the Lions. If you look at what Kerryon Johnson did last year, when he was healthy, he still had 70% of the touches on that offense. You give me Swift behind a decent offensive line with an above-average quarterback with 70% of the touches, and I'm seeing, at least a top 20 running back. So I'm totally cool with that. I'll take Swift any day. He's easily my third running back. There's a little bit of a drop-off for me after Swift, and you can call me the guy that just loves Swift, and I'm just going to hold on for everything it's worth. But we also have to look at who the offensive coordinator is and what's the track record with that offensive coordinator. He first started in Minnesota, had Adrian Peterson. Sure, you can give him a pass there, but he rode Adrian Peterson hard.
Yep.
Right? There's a reason why he was, either the first or second pick in every draft in redraft leagues, right? Because Adrian Peterson was it. And then he moves to Seattle, has Marshawn Lynch. But even when he doesn't have Marshawn Lynch, he continually rides these guys. It's the reason why Chris Carson turned into a bell cow back, is because he repeatedly got the touches there, right? And we even saw it with Thomas Rawls, who was able to get a few weeks of top 24 production. And then we move over to Detroit, and we even see guys were getting value that really shouldn't have any value. Ty Johnson, Bo Scarborough were getting value because of who their offensive coordinator was. Sure, they might not have been getting the pass-catching work just because of their natural skill set, which is something that we can obviously give the plus to Swift, no doubt. That's an easy one, right? But the work that they were given clearly shows that they want a bell cow, and that Darrell Bevell relies on a bell cow to be a solid part of this offense.
Good point. I love all that. I'm not going to even add anything to that. Y'all did a good job there. All right, so in the effort of time here, I'm going to combine these next two running backs because they're kind of both Ryan's boy, because he's got Cam Akers from Florida. Cam Akers from Florida State, and J.K. Dobbins now plays for his Ravens. So, Ryan, give me your thoughts on both of these guys and their landing spots.
I love Akers' landing spot, short term and long term with them. I think that offense is running best. McVay's offense is running its best was when they had Todd Gurley being the focal point of their offense, catching the ball in the backfield, getting plenty of carries. Cam Akers at Florida State, if you can look past the atrocious line, showed that he can be on the field all three downs. He's an excellent pass blocker. He's good catching the ball out of the backfield. He can catch wheel routes. He can do all kinds of he can do a lot out of that. He can run in between the tackles. He can run outside. I think he can make that offense go. And I know they're talking about having running back by committee there, but the skill set shows he's a complete every down back when all the other people are role players there. That's another cream's going to rise to the top. I think that's going to be sooner or later in that offense. So I'm comfortable with him there. Hopefully they don't just beat him because he took a beating at Florida State. Yeah. And a couple years in the NFL, he could be a shorter-term value because of the beating he could take there.
Fair. What about Dobbins?
I mean, I think Dobbins is perfect fit in Baltimore. I like his skill set. I like the same read with Lamar. I don't know how many carries and how much market share he'll have this year. I have him slated for just above 100 carries. I don't think he's going to get a ton unless somebody gets hurt. They love Mark Ingram there. He's a guy you're going to have to be patient. If you draft him high, you may be disappointed year one, but Ingram's contract can be broken after this year without salary cap implications. Gus Edwards is a free agent after next year, and he's a better back than Justice Hill. So I think he could be a year sit unless something happens.
All right, good stuff. Kane, what are your thoughts on these two guys? I know we got kind of in a Twitter tiff over Cam Akers because I had him number 3, and you didn't like that too much. But give me your thoughts on both of these guys.
Yeah, so I love both these guys. I don't think you're going to hear you're not going to hear me say anything bad about Cam Akers. I think just the one thing, that is tough for me is, I think he had the worst landing spot out of the 5 running backs. Just for me personally, I'm not saying that he's not gonna show out, and he has a good chance to be a bell cow back in that backfield, right, even the Rams came out and said that he could start in a committee, but he's projects to end up being a bell cow. That's everything we love to hear. The only thing I'm worried about is just how little they sometimes give work to running backs. Especially rookie running backs. We saw what happened with Darrell Henderson last year. Cam Akers is clearly a better talent than Darrell Henderson, so don't hear what I'm not saying on this. But at the same time, right, he didn't get many touches. There's a reason why Malcolm Brown, who was just in that offense longer, got more touches. I think it might be messy for especially the first few weeks, knowing that McVay will probably ride the hot hand. Right, and we hear a lot of our BBC, but the thing you need to keep in mind is that things might start as a running back by committee, but those coaches end up riding who's playing the best.
Yep.
And that's going to end up being Cam Akers because he's the best talent on that team. So things might start slow, but eventually I know he's gonna pick up, and hopefully that offense can take another step forward. We saw just how badly they took a step backwards this year. Let's just hope that they can do well again. But sadly, I'm actually going to agree with everything Ryan said about J.K. Dobbins, though. You do have to be patient, and like the coaching staff still likes Justice Hill, so it's going to be annoying, but you're going to see Justice Hill getting some of these damn touches that you didn't want, that you don't want him to have, and that you want to go to J.K. Dobbins.
Fair.
Justice Hill's still going to end up with like this 50, 60, 70 rushing attempps, and you'd be like, well, if we would have added this total to J.K. Dobbins, he could have been a low-end RB2. Right, but the way they split it up is because, things get so efficient in that offense, and they want people to stay healthy, and that's why it's efficient. So I think you just have to hope for the best. And in Dynasty long-term, J.K. Dobbins for 4 years with that offense is going to be a screaming value, especially after year one.
Good stuff. All right, we did have a question on Periscope real quick before we get to these next couple of running backs, and it's from AB. I don't know if it's the AB, but his handle is AB. He wants to know how do you balance, when you draft these rookies, how do you balance it and take into account when there's going to be an early season RBBC? Like, how do you determine their value with that sort of RBBC value in the beginning, Ryan?
Honestly, when I'm drafting this early, I'm taking the talent. In rookie drafts, I'm taking the talent. If you're picking super early, chances are you're not in win-mal mode anyways. Or if you are, you can normally find somebody to kill in a couple weeks. It's no different than bye week. I drafted J.K. Dobbins in my draft recently, and I have no intention of starting him the first few weeks, and I have no problem with that. It's just you take who's the best. You can't draft for situations. Dynasty, it's not a redraft. We're going long term on this. If I'm screwed for 5 weeks, 2 years of production out of the guy, fine. Same with even waiting a year. That's fine if I know that production will be there.
All right, fair enough. All right, so we're going to quick fire these last couple of running backs here. We got 6 through 12 to get to. I'm just going to alternate these running backs here, and I know Dylan is kind of Kane's man, so we'll start with number 6 that I got here for Keyshawn Vaughn. Ryan, we'll go to you for Keyshawn Vaughn. Give me your thoughts on him and his landing spot here in Tampa Bay.
I think it's a good landing spot. I'm starting to feel like he's getting a little bit overvalued. You're starting to see him getting into that mid-first round.
Yep.
I like what he can do, but he's still not an elite running back. I think he's still gonna split a lot of carries with Ronald Jones. They're definitely going to be a hot hand approach. I don't know how much better he actually is. I'm probably one of the few who says that, but he has a good game. He's a solid player, but that offense is going to pass a lot, and I think they're going to be splitting carries.
All right, good
I
stuff.
think it's a huge drop-off from those other 5 backs now. Sorry.
All right, no, you're fine. All right, Kane, you have the floor. You got to convince me. I didn't include Dylan in my top 12 running backs, and you gave me some shit for it on Twitter. So, convince me here. Why should I be taking AJ Dillon in my rookie drafts?
Right. So the first thing we need to look at is price. Right. So obviously, price is the most important thing. And if we're looking at ADP is he's going middle of the second round, and I like that price. And so I'll get into why, right? Because that's the big question. Why A.J. Dillon? And you're going to see that a lot over Twitter over the next few months. If we look at this year, he's going to get some of the carries. We've already seen Jamal Williams have an issue staying healthy. We've also seen just the whole Packers organization not want to give Aaron Jones the lion's share of the work. So those are things that we already know. After 2021, A.J. Dillon's going to be the only person left on that roster. We're going to see Aaron Jones gone. It's clear that Matt LaFleur wants to recreate what happened in Tennessee and hopefully catch lightning in a bottle. The fun part about lightning in a bottle is it comes with a lot of opportunity. And what's the best predictor of success for a running back? And that's opportunity.
Agreed.
And it's clear that A.J. Dillon's going to have that opportunity, especially in the 2021 season, because you can't tell me that they're going to re-sign Aaron Jones with the way that they've been treating him overall.
Fair.
Right? I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think he fits what they want to do in the offense, right? They want a higher than normal mobile quarterback, which they drafted in Jordan Love in the first round, and somehow he was a first-round talent and surprises us all. Second round, they even went with a running back. So, it's even more telling, right, that they drafted him in the second round, that it's clear that Aaron Jones isn't the future of this team. So A.J. Dillon is clearly the future. I don't know why you wouldn't want to spend a middle second-round pick, especially at a position where the opportunity is so scarce for some players. So it's an easy buy for me. I had him ranked 6th before the season. I have him ranked 6th now. He's still going to be good, and he's bigger and faster than most people think he is. Late in the season at Lambeau with that weather, that's going to be tough tackling 250 pounds coming at you.
Fair point. Yeah, I definitely I got to admit, when I did my top 12, I assumed, or I just thought, that Aaron Jones still had 2 years on his contract. I didn't think he was in his last year of his contract, so that kind of changed my thought process a little bit. Because I do think Dillon will be that guy next year, because I think the comp coming out was kind of a Derrick Henry comp, and of course LaFleur was with Tennessee and had Derrick Henry, so he's trying to recreate there what he had in Tennessee, so Dillon could be that guy. So I agree there, and I think I will be moving Dillon into my top 12 after realizing that's Jones and both I think Jamal Williams is also going to be gone as well. So good stuff. All right, moving on to the next running back, Ryan. Let's try to go quick fire here. Zach Moss, what are your thoughts?
I think Zach Moss is going to be splitting carries with Singletary. Looking at him, he's a two-down back to me. I know he had more catches last season, 28, than he had previous 3 combined. But there's definitely a limited ceiling on him in that offense. And I think skill set. I think looking at him, his role, the ceiling of his role could be like a Jordan Howard from when he was in Chicago, which isn't bad. It's solid fantasy production. But you're going to have a limited ceiling on him because he's looking more like a two-down back than anything else.
All right. Quick fire. Antonio Gibson. Back to you, Kane.
I think it's going to be tough for him to produce right away. With all the running backs on that team, I think it's going to be tough for him to get any work in the backfield other than some receiving work. And even that might even go to another player. So who knows what's going to happen there. I think if Geis can actually be healthy, there's a good chance he can take some of that receiving work away that we think Antonio Gibson's gonna get. I think it's going to be important to see the track record of Ron Rivera with a gadget player, and he hasn't really had many of those. So we'll see what he can do with Antonio Gibson as a whole.
All right, and then back to you, Ryan, with Darrington Evans, and then I got another question I want to ask to both of you. So go ahead and give me Darrington Evans, Ryan.
I'm forfeiting this to you, Jeff, because this is your boy.
Yeah, this is my boy.
Sorry for the monkey wrench.
Yeah, so I've been buying Darrington Evans anywhere that I can get him. I've been getting him in probably the late seconds in most of my drafts. I know everybody's kind of scared of Derrick Henry being there. I think Darrington Evans is what they wanted Dion Lewis to be that complement, and I do think that he will have a role in year one and going forward, especially if they don't re-sign Derrick Henry next year. I think Darrynton Evans is going to be a PPR guy. I think that Tennessee Titans offense is not, super high explosive. It's not going to be putting up Chiefs type numbers, but I do think that they'll be using those running backs pretty well there, with Evans coming out of the backfield as well as Derrick Henry, of course, pounding them. So Evans, from where you can get him, like you mentioned before, Kane, it's all about cost, and where you can get Evans and the potential that you have in him, I do think that he's definitely worth the pick there. All right, real quick on Facebook, we have a question from my other co-host from the DFS show. He's actually watching on Facebook right now, Gerson. He listed 8 running backs, or kind of like late second and early third, even some late third running backs here. And he wants to know which one you think has the highest ceiling of these. So it'll be kind of hard for me to list them all. Y'all keep your track of them here, but I'll go ahead and try this here. So we got Anthony McFarland, Darrynton Evans, Josh Kelly, Eno Benjamin, DJ Dallas, LaMichael Perrin, Michael Warren, and Jason Huntley. So Ryan, of those 8, who do you think has the highest ceiling of all of them?
Probably have to say McFarland, even though just because that offense is really liking to run the ball, and we've seen Pittsburgh, you like to do dump offs to the running backs, and we've seen 40, 50 catch guys out of their backfield who are nowhere near as athletic as him. So I'd say him, but I'm not looking at any of those guys as true ceiling guys.
All right. What about you, Kane?
Yeah, I'm probably going to say the same thing. The 2 highest upside guys, I think, are McFarland and Evans, just because, both those running backs that they're behind have 1 year left on their deal. Both offenses like to use bell cow running backs. So I think those are the guys I'd want to take a shot on if I really want to take shots on running backs here.
All right, fair enough. The next guy on the list was McFarland, so we'll skip him for that reason. And we'll hit Josh Kelly. And Kane, I'll pass it to you for Josh Kelly, then we'll take a quick commercial break.
No thanks. I don't really want Josh Kelly. I don't get it. Josh Kelly, the landing spot, not great. I don't understand drafting him in the 3rd round. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I think with the Chargers, are you expecting him to take over the Justin Jackson role? And is Justin Jackson even going to take over the Melvin Gordon role? Right? Like, there's just so many questions that I don't even know how to answer them. So I'm not going to just keep taking shots on guys when there's 3rd rounders like Lynn Bowden out there around the same price point that I would much rather have.
Yeah, good point. All right, that ran a little bit longer than I would hope, but we're getting some good stuff here, so I don't want to cut any of these guys off. We want to get this information in. Quick commercial break, guys. When we come back, we'll tackle some of these second-year running backs and see who might break out this year.
In the unpredictable world of fantasy sports, when all hope seems lost and chaos and confusion rule, one hero will rise. And change everything. Going for 2.com. Because no one remembers the extra point.
All right, guys, welcome back. I'm here with Kane and Ryan, and we're talking second-year running backs. We just covered the rookies. We'll jump into some of these second-year guys and see if they have any chance to break out this year. We'll skip the guys that had good seasons. I won't talk about Miles Sanders. Won't talk about Josh Jacobs. Those guys had pretty decent seasons already. Obviously, they're going pretty high in drafts this year. The first guy on my list here actually ended up being pretty close to an RB2. I wouldn't say this was a bust, but people are down on him quite a bit because they expected more from him. David Montgomery. Kane, we'll go to you on this one. Give me your thoughts on Montgomery and what you think he might do in 2020.
Yeah, so I think he's still in a good spot. They clearly didn't bring in any other running backs with high draft capital, so you still have to assume that David Montgomery is going to be the guy there. Still want to take a shot on him. I don't understand the current price that people are putting on him, which is really, really low. So I think he's a perfect buy asset because you're still getting, low-end running back 2 production. And the fun part is only so many guys can do that every week.
True.
So I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be taking a shot on a guy like that. He's still in a decent offense. Hopefully it can be better. With the addition of Nick Foles, maybe throwing the ball just more accurately to receivers could just help that offense more than Mitch Trubisky ever could.
Fair.
So I think you have to assume that it's at least stock up a little bit from last year, but buy on the hit that his value is taking because it shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think he took kind of a bad rep, and I actually owned him in one of my leagues, and not that he was lighting things up, but he was decent enough for a rookie. He definitely had some volume there for a little while. He had a couple games where he had 16, 17, 18 carries. So I do think that the value is there for where you can kind of get him right now. You can get him super cheap. So if you want to go out and buy Montgomery, definitely do so. Ryan, I'm going a little bit out of order here because I want to get you with your guy from the Ravens here, Justice Hill, a guy that I was high on last year coming into the season. Didn't really do a whole lot in the season, and now he's got to do with J.K. Dobbins there. Is Justin Hill anything that you're interested in there for Baltimore Ravens?
I'm sad about Justice Hill's stock. I was really high on him last year, but Justice Hill's a guy. He's going to be a third. He's a third down back. He's not an every down guy. He's going to be a pass catching back. I think when Dobbins takes over that offense, he's going to have, and the other 2 backs are gone. He'll have a nice value there, and I think he's going to be very, very cheap after this year. But yeah, take a bit of a hit. That you don't add a talent like Dobbins to that offense, who's good at everything Hill can do, but does everything else excellent as well. I think it's definitely a hit, and he's gonna have a hard time filling out a solid fantasy role until the other backs are out of this picture.
I agree. I think that unless there's injuries there, I think Hill will have a hard time breaking out there. So I agree 100%. Cam, I'm going to go to you on one of the guys that I've been kind of buying everywhere. I've drafted him in some of my guillotine leagues as well. I think I just got him in like the 16th or 17th round of a 17-team guillotine league. I think he might have a good season this year. And that's Damian Harris, who didn't do much last year at all, but he's playing for the Patriots. And, Tom Brady's now gone. They're going to go to a more run-heavy offense, we assume. Sonny Michel hasn't really done a whole lot the last end of last year and in most of his rookie season as well. So what are your thoughts on Damian Harrison this year? Or Damian Harris, sorry.
Don't like him. I don't see where he's going to fit into this offense, and I'm not sure how much more he can do that Sonny Michel doesn't already do. And I think Sonny Michel's clearly a step above him in talent, but a step below him in knee health. So obviously that's something that we have to monitor is just the terrible health of Sonny Michel's knees.
Right.
I think they just should keep a meter on the CV and kind of move that up so close to an injury. I think that would just be helpful for all fantasy players. But just overall, I have a hard time seeing where Damian Harris is going to fit into that offense. He's not going to get any of the passing down work. James White is still there. So you really are hoping for him to supplant what Sonny Michel does, and I just don't see that happening. I think Sonny Michel is just a better running back than Damian Harris is.
All right, fair point. I was buying him because you can get him super cheap right now. You almost get him for free. So I've been taking him wherever I could because the upside, I think, is definitely there. If Michel does end up being injured and being out, I think Harris could be a good fill-in there, and he can maybe take the role eventually completely away from Sonny Michel. But like I said, it's all about price, and his price is super cheap right now. All right, Ryan, we're going to go.
I'm not saying don't buy him at the price that you just said, but I think you need to have realistic expectations, right? Especially coming from last year's rookie draft, where everyone thought right away he was going to take over what Sonny Michel did.
Yep.
And that clearly didn't happen. So I think we just need to really be patient if you're buying him at this point.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, like I said, it's all about price for me. I wouldn't pay, top dollar for him right now. He's basically free. If you can get him somewhere, go ahead and grab him. He's worth it. All right, Ryan, we'll go to you for Devin Singletary, who I think his stock took a little bit of a hit with Zach Moss being there. What are your thoughts on Singletary this year? Just a second-year breakout for him?
I think we're going to see a lot of similarities what we saw with Devin Singletary last year when the role shifted a little bit more towards him. He's still not getting a ton of carries. He's going to get 40 to 50% of the carries a game. He's going to have receiving work. He's going to be a solid RB2 when that offense is going and in good matchups. You're not going to have that huge ceiling with him. That's going to be capped because the red zone production, because he's going to get that taken from him between Josh Allen and then Zach Moss. So he's going to have a very hard time getting red zone work. So his ceiling's going to be limited because of the touchdown production. But he's still going to catch passes. He's still going to get a decent amount of carries. He has running back to potential, and I think he has a nice floor because of that receiving ability. But you're not going to play him as a game winner. He's the guy you're going to plug in your flex and just know you'll get a solid start out of him.
Yeah, I'm a Singletary owner in my main Dynasty League, and I will tell you that Frank Gore last year was so frustrating because I think he was top 10, maybe even like top 8 in red zone carries. And I think he was even higher if you go to like 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 at the goal line. He rammed his head into that line multiple times, and I'm like, just give it to Singletary for God's sakes. So I think this year, Zach Moss steps into that role. He might get 10, 11 goal line carries like Frank Gore did last year. So that'll kind of limit Singletary's ceiling there a little bit. But I do think if you own Singletary, you'll get kind of what you got last year from him in that role. So I do think Singletary is a viable asset in fantasy right now. All right, we're going to move over to the Bengals here and talk about 2 running backs that were taken last year and see if there's any value whatsoever here. I know we've heard the rumors that Joe Mixon might hold out. It's not looking like he will, but there's still potential that he might. There's 2 running backs taken last year. One of them got injured, Rodney Anderson, who I know me and Ryan would have had him much higher if it wasn't for all the injuries, and then he goes into the NFL and gets injured immediately. And then Travion Williams is the other guy there. Kane, any thoughts on either of these guys having any kind of value in fantasy whatsoever?
So Rodney Anderson reminds me of Marcus Lattimore. Just coming out of South Carolina, just the repeated knee injuries when he has the skill to be a top running back, it's just a really tough thing.
Yep.
So I don't expect a lot out of him. I think the knee injuries are going to keep weighing him down there. Travion Williams isn't going to have any value to me unless Joe Mixon holds out, and that's probably not going to happen given the new rules in the CBA. So I don't see either of them having any value, and I certainly don't want them on my fantasy team. All
right, fair point. Looking like last year's running back class is kind of not so good because there's not a lot of guys that are going the second year. They're going to have the chances to really succeed here. So Ryan, I'm gonna go to you for the next one here, and this is the guy that if you owned him, you were happy for about 3 weeks when they dumped Todd Gurley, and you're like, oh, it's Henderson's season now. It's all his backfield, and then of course they go out and draft Cam Akers and killed all his value. But any thoughts on Darrell Henderson or any value whatsoever for him?
I think we kind of hit that. We talked about Akers. I think he takes a bit of a hit there, and if he was having a hard time getting in there with Malcolm Brown in front of him last year. He could have a receiving role, third down back role. He's never going to be a bell cow back. He's just not that type of player. He's an electric. The touches will come here or there. They may try to create some touches for him, but he's never going to be a focal point of that offense, and he's going to be a fantasy nightmare if you're trying to play him on a week-to-week basis. You never know what's going to happen.
All right. Yeah, I think I agree there. I think Darrell Henderson is not going to do a whole lot there in that Rams offense. So in the effort of time here, Kane, if you can look at the sheet there, we got a couple running backs listed: Bryce Love, Raquel Armstead, Dexter Williams, Tony Pollard, Benny Snell, Darwin Thomas, and Alexander Madison. Pick one of those guys that you actually want to talk about that you think could have a good season this year.
That'd be Alexander Madison.
Yeah.
I think out of those guys, Alexander Madison just has the highest chance to succeed. I think part of it is he has probably the best running offense, one of the better running offenses around him of guys on this list. At the same time, I think, Dalvin Cook is not always the healthiest person. He has trouble staying healthy. At the same time, who knows what he's going to do, if he's going to hold out, expecting a new contract from the Vikings. A lot of people are saying that it's actually a good idea if he does, because of his injury history, to make sure that he gets paid before he steps on the field again. And we've seen just Gary Kubiak have tremendous seasons with terrible running backs.
Good point. Yep, that is very true.
Like, when Noshan Moreno is a top 24 running back week after week because of Gary Kubiak's system, I think that's important to note. And Alexander Madison is better in my eyes than old Noshan Moreno. So I think you really have to expect that if there's no Dalvin Cook, Madison's really going to be the guy at Minnesota.
Yeah, I like that there. So Ryan, I gave him the pick of the litter there because he's the guest. So of those running backs, Bryce Love, Raquel Armstead, Dexter Williams, Tony Pollard, Benny Snell, and Darwin Thompson. Give me one guy you want to talk about here that you think could be something this year.
The other one who I actually have any faith for production at all is Tony Pollard, and I think that takes some imagination to get. You have to for him to have a premier role. It has to be without Z, who's been pretty healthy his whole career, and I think he'll get some touches. He could be a 7 to 10 touch kind of guy if the offense is flowing. But there's a lot of weapons there now. It's going to be hard for him to carve out a role with all those receivers they have now. They're losing a lot of targets, but I think he has the most upside. I think he's the most talented out of the rest of these backs and in the best offense. But it's going to take some work for him to have fantasy impact.
All right, and I will pick one of the guys here on the list to talk about a little bit, and I'll pick the guy who's right here in Washington, D.C., where I live, Bryce Love. I've been buying him pretty cheap in most of my my drafts here, and not that I think he's going to be a great running back. I just think that where you're drafting him, he has the potential to be the running back for the Redskins. He will compete obviously with Geis, and now with Antonio Gibson being there as well, he'll compete with him. But there is a chance. There is a chance. He basically redshirted last year. He's healthy now by all accounts. Adrian Peterson's not going to play the next 10 years, so I think that he's going to be faded out. So Bryce Love, where you're getting him, he at least has the opportunity to fight for that starting role. So I think where you're getting him, he'd be one that I'd be buying there at a very, very cheap price, almost free practically. All right, it's now time for our favorite part of the show, the Forgotten Fantasy Player.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, I think, if I'm not mistaken, last week or the week before we had our first tight end, Forgotten Fantasy Player. So you got some tough competition here, Kane. Give me your Forgotten Fantasy Player this week.
So I was actually going to go with a tight end as well.
Nice.
And I'm going to Cleveland. And I think it's important that we talk about Gary Barnidge.
Wow. Nice. I love it.
Gary Barnidge, that 2015 season, over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns on 79 catches. And then just gets this huge contract, and then
nothing.
We never see him again. So he was just a guy that, I was looking through names and trying to rack my brain about who to talk about, and I think Gary Barnidge just sticks out because he's one of those guys where you saw him get the contract and everyone's drafting him the next season in redraft leagues thinking, oh, this is going to be the guy, and then all of a sudden, he has 60 catches the rest of his career.
Yeah.
And then he gets cut and we never see him again, and it's all right, that was cool.
Yeah, that is an awesome one because I actually had forgotten about him. That is a great name. I love it. That is an awesome one. I think the Browns have a couple guys like that because I think we had Peyton Hillis had that huge breakout season and didn't do anything after that. So the Browns got a couple guys like that. What was that, Ryan?
Madden cover.
That's right. He had the Madden cover.
Get on a Madden cover.
Yeah.
Right.
When his best season was only 1,100 yards.
Yeah, exactly. It was just the great white hype. He just basically came out of nowhere, and everybody just kind of loved him for that one season.
He was a fantasy league winner, though.
He was.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. He definitely was. All right, that wraps the show up for tonight, guys. Let's go around the room real quick. Give us your Twitter handle one more time, where we can find your show, where we can find your work, whatever you want to talk about. Kane, go ahead and kick us off here. What you got?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Devy_Kane. I write over at DLF. The most fun thing I do is the Devy Marketplace podcast. We just try to have fun. That's all we want to do. We don't even care if people listen. It's just us talking to our friends for an hour. Like, that's just fun to us. If you want to listen, like, that's cool. It's going to be a whole lot of nonsense. Caleb and I liken ourselves to Jim and Dwight from The Office.
Nice.
It's just about having fun. Sometimes talking about what we're supposed to talk about, but that rarely happens. So come check us out over there. We just want to have fun, and if you have crazy suggestions that you want us to talk about, especially if it's food related, we're more than happy to talk about food.
Nice. I love it. All right, Ryan, what you got?
Find me here every Tuesday, going2.com, the Armchair Fantasy Show, writing for Go for 2, and then covering the SEC for the Dynasty Draft Room.
All right, good stuff. And of course, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Me and Ryan are putting together some War Room episodes that were real popular before the draft. Now that we got the draft, we want to get in and get those knocked out there. It's basically player profiles. They're like 10 to 13 to 15 minute episodes. Talk about one player and just kind of go over his landing spot. So we'll get those put up here pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that. We got some great guests coming up here in May. We got Ray GQ coming on the show pretty soon, and some names I'm forgetting right now. But we got a great month planned, guys. So definitely stay tuned to the Armchair Fantasy Show. For Ryan, for Kane, I'm Jeff. That's a wrap.